Hello, I like to share a project update. Um, so I've done a lot of work on this application, and I also kept it up to date with source control, so you can see it public. The changes that I've made. So I have 72 commits on this, and these are my recent commits. So this is all the work I've been doing recently. So yeah, so I try to keep it as a focus to the commits as possible. So yeah, I've been pretty active lately. So currently this is the application, and let me go ahead and start this up. So I'm going to start the application and just walk you down from the beginning. There we go. This is the front page. Okay, login and sign up. So let me go do a real quick snapshot of the database. So authentication currently has one object and is test@email.com, and user profile has 0 records. So authentication and user profile is what I'm focusing on right now. So I'm going to go ahead and sign up a new account. So test2. So if I leave this as is, I'm going to say validation, and those have been tested. So the password here is going to be test. Okay. Test pass 123 and the exclamation mark. So I'm going to post this back into and then I get the sign up form. So after that sign up, what happens is that my authentication created a second object. And now I have test2@email.com, and here's my password. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill out this registration form. And okay, testing summary. So this is just a quick form that I pulled out, and okay, so testing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and post this form out. And now we'll see that if I go to my database, I'll see that if I go to user profile, this form has been posted into the database. So here's where I'm at right now. And after all this database is being posted, these forms and information are being posted, what I created was a backend API call. So now what I can do is that I can request data into my application. So let's say, okay, just gonna. So what I'm doing is I'm passing a couple of parameters, and okay. So if I look at my call, what I'm doing is that I'm actually authenticating into the user, and I'm actually going into the database. I'm checking to see where the user is has this email account and the password, and I'm passing in the password as a key value, and I'm getting the data type, which is a user profile. So when I send this request, I get a capture of my backend controller. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm getting a get mapping, and this is a REST controller. So I'm getting the RESTful data, API data. So I'm getting the values of user key and data, and I'm going to check the user and key with the database. So DB service login credential, and this is a method that I wrote. Okay, there we go. Check login credential. So basically, it's going to check the password of this account. Okay. All right. Yeah, so it's going to find the email and it's going to get the password, and it's going to check to see if the password that is passed in is equal to the password that I have in the database. And if so, it's going to return a Boolean value true. I'll go back to my API controller. So I caught a value, and I'm going to see what the value is. Right here, I have the user test2@email.com, and the key is here. So if I double check my database, go to authentication, these are the correct values. And if it is the correct values, okay, actually this value is incorrect. So if this value is incorrect, it's actually going to return null. So the password is incorrect. So this is a good test to see that, I have, this is functioning properly. So right now, what I did was I called the API with the incorrect password. So if the password is incorrect, I did get no values in my database. But if I do pass in the correct password, I go ahead, you can see that it's going to flow through the right logic. And it's going to return my user profile. It's going to go into the database and find the user profile ID. So when I return this, I go back, and here's voila, I get my JSON data from the database. So anyone that does mobile app developments, stuff like that, is just going to be pretty useful, because now my web application has an API service, and I can create some sort of very unique authentication mechanism, generated GUI and mutual authentication, something like that, to call an API from my Android applications to get data from my web application. So I'm going to make this a heavy data collection application tool, and I'm gonna run a whole bunch of reports, and I'm thinking about going into the AI direction. So gather data and do something very intriguing, and I don't know. Let's see. Let's put as much work into this application as possible, and I'm going to briefly go over the code. So right now, what have I been working on? So I went over let's go to the login controller. So I'm in my login controller, and now in the login controller, I have a persistent session, which is actually created in Spring Security, and security handles sessions its own way. So Spring Security has configuration for session, and this is the attribute to do that. Enable global method security. So for postback is going to enable a persistent session, and this is where I create my actual authentication for security pages. So here we are. So page security goes into this authentication service. And this authentication service injects the DB service dependency. And what happens is that this authentication is going to load the user by its email, and is going to pull the account information. So DB service is going to pull the account information, is going to check the password, and it's all by Spring Security. So every single page is going to run into a filter for permission before it even touches the controller. That's is pretty secure that way. And now in the login controller, you'll see that I no longer have a DB service to check the login. So right now I let Spring Security and Spring Filter handle that service for me. In here I have a session attribute. So this is like a catchy that I'm storing, and I'm keeping this catchy persistent. So I'm going to use this to retain information from the session for the user. These are the dependencies for this controller. And in here, what I have is I have this new sign-in page. It's going to get the email and password. It's going to check to see if the account exists. And if it does exist, then this model is going to add a message. Account exists from configuration property. So configuration property is something I created to make a non-hard-coded, to get rid of hard-coded properties. So I have in here configuration properties and some messages, and the value of that message is going to check this value right here, which is stored in the application properties page. So if I go into the application properties page, which is going to be in resource application properties, and here we are. So this is no longer hard-coded. This is like a properties page. So there we go. I just add these properties, and there we go. These messages are here. I can just adjust these messages to change the message across the entire app. So there we go. Got rid of the hard-coded values. And there we go. If the account exists, it's going to add a message and is going to return a view. So that is if the account exists. But if the account does not exist and it is a new sign up, then I'm going to insert the new account into the database. And I'm going to add a model attribute, message, new register message. And I'm going to store a persistent user in the model view. And then I'm going to pass it into register. And then register is going to pull the form. I have the register form. I'm going to take this model attribute and I'm going to post this form. So I'm going to retrieve this form from the HTML page, and I'm going to insert it as a profile. So the user is the persistent session of the user account, which I'm getting from here. And I'm passing this model view object, model view set view here, and I'm returning register. Get register is going to get the register form, and the register form is going to be a new register form. I'm going to fill values for that register form, and I'm going to pass it into the post mapping. The post mapping is going to retrieve the register form, is going to insert it to the database along with the catchy user, and then is going to return the register. This is actually going to be the settings page when I do some more development. Okay, and let's go to API service. And the API service is pretty unique, so I made it very dynamic. So if I go to controller, REST API controller, you see that first thing I did was inject the dependencies for the DB, the database, and also all the repositories that is involved with the database, involved with the data. And in here, what I have is this get map all. So get map all is going to pull those parameters from the URL, and then is going to go into the database to see exactly what kind of data you're trying to retrieve from the database. So if it's a question type or reply chain, a user profile, comments, or authentication, it's going to retrieve that data. It's going to return that data. And in here, I have a generic object that I'm going to get. So it's going to allow me to pull all these different type of objects into the field. And if any of this values in the URL parameter is incorrect, it's going to return null. So no value is going to be pulled in. Okay. So if I go and check with the database, I have authentication, comments, questions, reply chain, and user profile. These collections have documents, and these documents have API data in them. So it works really well and is super fast. And I have a lot of potential for this project. And then these APIs can be used to create a mobile application. So that's all for now. Let's see how much more work I can get done in the future.